Prior to commencing the 5-week Year 2 football and netball coaching, our Year 12 PE class worked collaboratively to plan and organise the program. As a class, we first identified that we would be working with Year 2 students and needed to decide which sport would best suit their interests and encourage participation. To ensure the students had input in the program, an email survey was sent to the Year 2 students asking whether they preferred AFL or netball. This allowed us to create a more engaging and inclusive learning environment by providing students with a choice. Following the survey, 21 students selected netball. 11 of those students were allocated to our coaching group. Hannah, Chloe and I then formed a coaching team and began discussing how we would effectively improve the students' participation and performance over the 5 weeks. Throughout the planning process, we collaboratively designed session plans, created benchmarking assessments, and allocated coaching responsibilities. From this, we decided to undertake both technical and tactical coaching roles to support the development of fundamental netball skills while also improving game awareness and decision-making during gameplay. Through analysing the demands of netball and considering the age and experience of the students, we identified 3 key focus areas: catching, throwing, and reaction time. These skills were selected because they are essential components of successful netball performance and provide the foundation for effective participation during the modified netball games. To monitor progress, we designed a series of pre, mid, and post tests and recorded the results in the benchmarking tables. These assessments would provide quantitative evidence of performance improvement while also allowing us to identify students at different stages of learning and adapt our coaching strategies accordingly. To assure ongoing evaluation throughout the program, Hannah, Chloe and I plan to complete written reflections after each testing period. These reflections will allow us to analyse individual performances, identify strengths and weaknesses, and determine each student's stage of learning. Understanding a student's stage of learning is important because it will influence the coaching strategies and feedback provided throughout the program. Before meeting the students, we predicted that most would sit within the cognitive stage due to their age and limited netball experience. As a result, we plan to utilise a traditional coaching approach involving demonstrations, explicit instructions, and frequent augmented feedback to support skill actualization. However, we also anticipated that some students may be in the associative stage due to previous participation in programs such as Net Set Go. To maintain organisation throughout the 5-week program, we established a structured weekly schedule for planning, teaching and reflection. Monday's lessons were used for teaching, Wednesday's lessons were used for reflection and analysis of collected data, and Thursday's lessons were dedicated to planning future sessions. Each session followed a consistent structure consisting of a warm-up, skill-based drills and modified game. The warm-up also helped students burn energy to settle into the lesson and become more focused before receiving coaching instructions. This structure allowed students to develop skills in a controlled environment before applying them in gameplay situations. On testing weeks, the benchmarking assessments were conducted after the warm-up to ensure the results reflected the students' existing skill level, ensuring the students hadn't learned anything prior. Following the completion of week 1 pre-testing, it became evident that most students were operating within the cognitive stage of learning. Students such as Charlotte, Olivia, Letty and Salulu all demonstrated inconsistent technique and required significant concentration when performing skills. This was supported by the quantitative data shown. These results were consistent with the characteristics of cognitive learners, who often make frequent errors, rely heavily on demonstrations and explicit instructions, and are unable to identify and correct their own mistakes. As a result, Chloe, Hannah and I collaboratively adopted a direct instruction coaching approach, providing clear demonstrations, regular augmented feedback. As a result, we predominantly used terminal knowledge of results feedback during most testing. For example, we provided simple encouragement such as good job, so close next time, and good try, to reinforce successful attempts and maintain confidence without interrupting performance. This approach was appropriate for cognitive learners because they benefit from regular guidance and clear feedback while developing fundamental movement patterns. In contrast, Alex, Pippa, Ari, and Nova demonstrated characteristics of associative learners, who often show greater consistency, make fewer mistakes, and are beginning to identify and correct errors independently. This was reflected in their scores, as they are more consistent when performing. Unlike the cognitive learners, they require less direct instructions and were able to apply feedback more effectively. These results suggested that some of their students would benefit from terminal knowledge of performance feedback during skill-based drills. For example, students were reminded to watch the ball into the hands when catching and step forwards to their target when passing. During the modified netball game, it became apparent that students lacked technical awareness. Students frequently stepped, obstructed opponents, and crowded around the ball, which showed that many students did not yet understand the rules or positional requirements of netball. Participation levels varied considerably across the group. Although most students were willing to engage, Olivia and Letty showed low motivation and often chose not to participate. This was a concern because skill development is heavily dependent on practice and volume, and active participation. Without sufficient time on task, students are unlikely to improve their performance or progress through the stages of learning if they continue with this behaviour. Following week 1, we identified several areas requiring improvement. The lesson was scheduled to begin at approximately 2:05 p.m. However, due to the time spent collecting the equipment, the lesson did not start till 2:15 p.m. This reduced the time for the lesson and prevented us from completing the block practice drills we had originally planned. According to the motor learning principles, maximising time on task is essential for cognitive learners. After reflecting together, Hannah, Chloe and I agreed to redistribute our coaching responsibilities. Hannah will be collecting the students while Chloe and I prepare the equipment and activities before the lesson. By doing this, we will hope to improve time management, allowing for more time for block practice and increasing students' time on task, which is important for cognitive learners. For week 2, we introduced Golden Child as a part of our warm-up. This game-based activity provided distributed practice opportunities while maintaining high levels of enjoyment and engagement. We also modified the shooting activity by replacing goals with targets shot at the goalpost, as many students lacked the strength to shoot the ball on top of the hoop, and shooting wasn't a part of what we were trying to improve. This adaptation ensured it was still achievable while still developing throwing accuracy. The changes implemented in week 2 were highly effective. Participation increased significantly across the group, with both Olivia and Letty engaging in all drills throughout the session. Positive reinforcement became a major component of our technical coaching approach. This showed our decision to use augmented feedback rather than only correcting errors increased students' confidence and willingness to participate. By recognising successful attempts, particularly for Olivia and Letty, participation improved significantly compared to week 1. Despite these successes, several challenges remained during many of the drills. Students were required to stand behind cones while waiting there for their turn, which caused some students to become distracted and disengaged from the activity. This highlighted a weakness in our session design, as too much inactive waiting time reduced engagement levels. Additionally, while participation in drills improved, Olivia and Letty still chose not to participate in most of the modified netball game, suggesting that confidence and game awareness remained an area for development. As a coaching group, we concluded that week 3 needed to focus on maximising active participation and reducing waiting time. We plan to introduce smaller groups behind cones and smaller side modified games to ensure every student remained involved throughout the lesson. We also plan to shorten game quarters and continue providing frequent augmented feedback to support confidence and further skill development. These adjustments were designed to facilitate progression from the cognitive stage towards the associative stage of learning, while maintaining high levels of enjoyment and participation. An additional challenge occurred during week 3 when poor weather forced the cancellation of our scheduled lesson. After talking with the Year 2 teachers, the lesson was postponed and rescheduled to Wednesday morning. This highlighted the importance of environmental considerations when planning our lessons and having a backup plan if needed. During the rescheduled session, we came fully prepared with all equipment set up before the students arrived. Our decision to continue using Golden Child as a warm-up was highly effective. As technical coaches, we recognise that the cognitive learners benefit from enjoyable, repetitive practice in a low-pressure environment. The activity increased time on task while maintaining motivation, which contributed to engagement throughout the remaining of the session. To maximise participation and minimise waiting time, we organised students into 3 rotating groups. While 2 teams participated in modified netball games, the third completed skill-based activities and a keepy-off game on the basketball court. This structure increased involvement and provided greater opportunities for distributed practice. Compared to the previous weeks, students spent less time standing and waiting for their turn. The effectiveness of these strategies was demonstrated through the post-testing results. These improvements suggested that the combination of targeted technical coaching, positive reinforcement, modified games, and increased opportunities for participation successfully improved both performance and engagement during the first 3 weeks of the program. As a coaching group, we identified the need to improve students' ability to spread out around the court and make better decisions in gameplay. For week 4, we plan to organise students into 3 players per third, encouraging them to use the available space rather than crowding around the ball. This modification was designed to maximise participation, create more policy options, and improve decision-making by giving students more time and space to execute skills. Week 4 was conducted indoors due to ongoing poor weather conditions. While the gym was a good alternative, it presented lots of challenges. All groups were using the gym, creating a noisy and distracting environment. For cognitive learners who benefit from closed environments with limited distractions, this reduced the effectiveness of direct instruction and made it difficult for students to maintain focus. During the 3v3 modified game, the ball frequently remained on one side of the court, resulting in students on the opposite side becoming disengaged. This highlighted the limitations in the game, as not all students were able to have equal opportunities to participate. In response, we reduced the duration of the drills and increased the use of the game-based activity to maintain engagement. Although participation initially increased, students' fatigue became evident towards the end of the session, leading to decreased effort and concentration. A notable observation from week 4 was the students' enthusiasm for Golden Child. Many students repeatedly requested the activity throughout the session, indicating that the enjoyment was a significant factor influencing participation. Hannah, Chloe and I discussed this feedback after the lesson and collectively decided to make Golden Child the week 5 warm-up. Rather than assuming which activities students enjoyed, we allowed student feedback to guide our planning. This demonstrates how our coaching strategies continue to evolve throughout the reflection and evidence collected throughout the program. Week 5 was our most successful session of the program, with every student actively participating in both the post-testing and the activities. This was a significant improvement compared to week 1, where Olivia and Letty chose not to participate in several activities and many students lacked confidence when attempting the fundamental skills. Reflecting on our previous session, we began the lesson with Golden Child, as the students had repeatedly requested the activity during week 4. Starting with their favourite game immediately created a positive and enthusiastic learning environment, increasing their motivation and engagement from the beginning of the session. Compared to week 1, when the engagement gradually declined throughout the session, students were enthusiastic from the start and remained focused throughout the warm-up. Following the warm-up, we completed the post-testing to evaluate each student's progression across the 5-week program. Comparing the post-testing with the pre- and mid-testing, results demonstrate clear improvement in catching, throwing, accuracy, and reaction time. Students who initially identified as cognitive learners showed a greater consistency in their skill execution, suggesting they were most likely progressing towards the associative stage of learning. Unlike week 1, where students required constant demonstrations, explicit instructions, and reminders, by week 5, many students required fewer demonstrations and were able to perform skills with greater confidence and made fewer technical errors without requiring constant reminders. Throughout the lesson, we continued to provide augmented feedback by combining knowledge of performance by correcting students' technique with knowledge of results by acknowledging and encouraging successful catches, throws, and reactions. Positive reinforcement remained an important coaching strategy, increasing students' confidence and willingness to attempt each skill. By week 5, some students were beginning to identify and correct some of their own mistakes through intrinsic feedback, demonstrating an increased understanding of the skill and independence. Following the post-testing, we played another game of Golden Child to maintain engagement before planning to complete a short game of Keep You Off. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we only had around 2 minutes of this activity before combining with other coaching group for the netball game. Although the activity was shortened, it still provided students with an opportunity to transfer their skills they had practiced into more game-like environment. Unlike week 1, where poor time management prevented us from completing all planned activities, our improved organisation allowed us to complete drills after our testing. During the game, it became evident that students were successfully applying many of the concepts that had been explicitly taught throughout the program, including stepping towards the target when passing, avoiding unnecessary short passes, maintaining the correct 3-foot defensive distance, and consistently remembering the no stepping rule. Compared to week 1, where students frequently crowded around the ball, stepped, obstructed opponent, and demonstrated little understanding of positional play, by week 5, the game flowed much more effectively, with students spreading across the court, making more effective passes and requiring minimal reminders. Even though Letty had to leave early, every remaining student chose to stay on the court for the entire game rather than rotating off or refusing to participate, demonstrating a substantial improvement in confidence, enjoyment, and willingness to participate compared to the beginning of the program. At the end of the session, we gave each student a personalised certificate, recognising a positive achievement or improvement they have demonstrated throughout the program. This acted as positive reinforcement and was rewarding a way to celebrate each student's progression over the 5 weeks. Overall, week 5 demonstrated that the improvement observed throughout the program were not accidental but were the result of our collaborative planning, continual reflection, and evidence-based coaching decisions. Rather than repeating same sessions each week, Chloe, Hannah and I analysed benchmarking data, reflected on participation, and modified our coaching strategies to suit the students' changing needs. Beginning with traditional coaching, block practice and frequent augmented feedback enabled students to develop fundamental movement patterns before progressively transitioning to more game-based activities as their confidence increased. As a result, both participation and performance improved across 5-week program, demonstrating that adapting our coaching strategies accordingly to evidence was highly effective in facilitating skill acquisition and progression throughout the stages of learning.